This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by GKN Automotive. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. Wow, 24. And my guest is Dirk Kesselgruber of GKN. How are you?
Hey, Miriam. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's so good to have you on the podcast because, you know, your company is like a lot of the companies that supply parts to the OEMs and the suppliers in the auto industry. Those of us who work in the business know you, but you affect the consumer experience so much that I want to talk a little bit about, you know, where we're at today with, you know, electrification in terms of, you know, drivetrain experiences, and then, you know, also where you came from, because I want people to understand a little more about GKN. So tell us, to start, you know, who is GKN? What are you doing? Where did you come from? And where are you going?
Yeah, I think let's start with history, because it's possibly surprising, but our company is already more than 250 years old. It was founded in Wales, in United Kingdom, long time ago, and it was actually a pure steel company. And over the decades and centuries, I can say, at some point in time, we developed into an automotive parts suppliers. And our core business is actually, we are coming from torque transfers, so side shaft, prop shafts for all-wheel drive cars. But then we also slowly transformed into providing torque management, and so in the space of where you get really driving experience, right? So many people know torque management from driving dynamics control, off-road performance, diff lockers, and those kind of things. And our company got expert in this. And the interesting piece is that with the electrification, the first electrified vehicles were actually, beside the very few BEVs at the very beginning, was actually hybrids. And with our heritage on torque management and all-wheel drive systems, we actually got asked very early to electrify vehicles. And it was in the year 2002 when we made our first electric drive system, actually in Japan.
Okay.
And since then we have progressed, right?
Can you actually talk about the vehicle that ended up in, so people have a context?
It was a Nissan Cube, this very small.
Oh, yeah. No, we had it in North America. We didn't have that version, I don't think. So was this an all-wheel drive solution where the rear motor was electric, or was it even simpler than that?
Correct. It was actually an electrified rear differential gear.
Oh, wow.
And so we provided drive torque. It's a very small car, so it was only active actually when you need the all-wheel drive. Main drive was still the front one. And under, let me say, possibly 80-90% of the situations or conditions, you would only take the front one. But if you need all-wheel drive for specific purposes, off-road, low traction, whatever comes, then this supporting motor was good enough to support the car to get out of difficult situations, right? And that was only the beginning. I think in these days, even secondary drive units for hybrids or secondary drive units in BEV has a lot more power. So they are contributing to the overall performance of the vehicle.
Yes.
But let me say, we started actually our electrification journey at this point in time. Today, we are developing and producing main drive systems for vehicles. So, and secondary drive systems. We have end-to-end system capabilities from the traction motor, the transmission system, the inverter, the software driving it. But our biggest part of our core business, interestingly, still side shafts and drive shafts. And even if you would rate that as let me say, possibly components only, they have a massive contribution to the user experience.
Of course.
Because that's the last point where you drive the wheels, right? And your range, how long you can drive with the car, is massively depending on how efficient those parts are.
So let's talk about some things. You put me in a car not too long ago. Yeah. Was it full battery EV? Yeah, it was full battery.
It was a full battery EV. You mean the small car with the
the small car.
Yeah.
And I got to experience some really cool torque vectoring algorithms, basically, because your engineer, Rory, I remember his name, awesome guy, Rory said, hey, push this button and try this. And we were doing donuts in the parking lot. And I was really impressed at the road holding of the vehicle, the way the road holding changed just by tweaking the software on this all-wheel drive electric drivetrain. But, we've had an evolution. We're here now. But, I remember Honda was super handling all-wheel drive, which was basically accelerating outer rear wheel using some kind of clever mechanics. You probably work on similar systems, if not that system. We've seen everything from, as you said, the Nissan Cubes implementation. Most hybrids today, like a lot of the Toyotas that are all-wheel drive, have a front-wheel drive based gas engine, have a rear-wheel completely electric drivetrain, right? People have no idea. They drive an all-wheel drive car and they have no idea all day long, like a hybrid one, that there is just the rear is just electric. There's nothing. And of course, the software and the electronics that control this are very, very complex, actually much more complex, I would say, than probably on an EV, on a pure battery EV, right? Because a pure battery, like once you have electric motors, it's a lot easier to modulate things. But also there is a cost issue here, right? Most electric cars today have a single front or rear motor or dual front and rear motors that need a differential, that need some sort of control of what wheel is doing what. And then, of course, at a higher end, we have tri-motor like the Model S Plaid from Tesla, or quad motor like the Rivian R1T and R1S, some models. Of course, ideally, you want quad motor, right? Like that solves for you. This is possibly the end game in a way, even though mechanically it doesn't involve too much. I actually want to talk about something that I saw at CES, and maybe you can talk to us about how GKN is looking at this. The in-wheel hub motors have been around for a while, but they're still a concept. They're not really commercialized. I think there are some commercial applications in commercial vehicles, but not in consumer vehicles yet. We saw this is Hyundai Mobis demo. If you look at my Instagram, you'll see a reel where the wheels can turn at any angle so the car can shift sideways, translate, do cool dances. Is that the end game? Do you think that ultimately we'll be able to develop a hub electric motor that is compact, reliable, lightweight, powerful, efficient, that can go in each wheel, and the rest is just software and driving electronics?
Well, that's from my perspective, it will be the in-wheel motors will cover a certain range of cars and certain application. From my perspective, what you want to achieve is you want to control each of the individual wheels, and you have multiple opportunities to do so. You can apply a dual motor per axle. You can apply a single motor with a torque management system, etc. And all these different architectures come with benefits and cost, right? So if you go to the in-wheel motor, you possibly have, let me say, the highest architectural cost. So you need to have 4 electronics, 4 wirings. You need to develop everything in a way that it survives acceleration, etc. So you only do that if you want to have the freedom of always steering and those kind of special maneuvering concepts, where the burden of the architectural cost will pay off by the features you provide to the use cases. When you're going into, for example, high-performance vehicles, your sweet spot would be most likely dual motor architectures, where you bring in the benefit of individual control of wheels, but you also have the benefit of low unsprung weights, good handling of a car, etc. Yeah, but you can pay for the electronics, you can pay for the extra effort. When you go into mainstream, by sudden it's going to be a different story, because cost is a main driving factor.
Exactly.
And you want to provide maximum features to the 98% consumer want to have specific driving performance features, specific off-road capabilities. And in this case, I think still a single motor per axle plus a torque management device is the lowest, let me say, effort to provide that. Right?
Absolutely. You don't think though that
each of these applications will have their place? The interesting piece, you mentioned software. In all these different setups, software is a dominating factor on providing experience, right?
Right,
and
absolutely.
you can handle pretty similar with all these solutions, right?
I was going to ask you, don't you think that the end game, though, is a motor at each wheel? I mean, technically, it's like, brake-by-wire now. We're putting the motors on the calipers at each wheel. There's no more hydraulics. You can control at 100 times per second the braking force. I mean, I realize that, right now that's not achievable. But knowing what I know as an engineer about electronics and software, that's the easy part. I mean, it's easy in the sense that it is not something, iteration can be very quick with software, right? It's not easy to create good software, which I think is an area GKN is really good at, and we're going to talk about in a second. But I feel like the end game is, it's much easier to me conceptually to do a good motor driver, inverter, and good software than it is to make a really, like, you need a lot more expertise to make a drive shaft equipped vehicle, right? And this is an expertise you have. So you're shifting your business in a way. Of course, there's a decade or two of interim, right? Where people are still, use drive shafts and differentials and axles and the old traditional setup. But I feel, to me, what really excites me, and I think what consumers are really excited about is, and that's where electrification is so important, because, we're heading right into it, right? Like, if you look at the world out here in California, 15% of our cars are electric, and they're mostly all-wheel drive dual motor, right? And they're mostly just basically appliances on wheels, right? And
correct.
But they still provide an exciting, engaging user experience. And so I'm thinking software is what makes a great part of that. And this is where your company like you is reinventing itself, I think, to become a software expert. Because my experience in that car on that parking lot was really eye-opening, right? Like, it makes me even think that in the future, we might be able to, under license, emulate the driving dynamics of different brands, right? Like, I mean, I don't see that ever happening, because the brands are very possessive of their IP, but not just their IP, but their, the whole reason you buy a Porsche is because it's a Porsche. You don't want to get a Porsche software button on your other vehicle, well, God forbid. But I think that is conceptually no reason why not to. So tell us about the software, because I think that a lot of people don't understand. They think, oh, electric is easy. You put an inverter, a battery, motor controller, off you go. No, right? You have to create an experience that feels both familiar and compelling. So how do you do that in software?
Well, actually, independent from the physical architecture of the car, which is finally mainly driven by cost, right? And the desired performance. But the experience when you drive it, you will possibly see not, let me say, a Porsche characteristic that you can put into a GM vehicle of a smaller size. This possibly will not. But within a brand experience, you can possibly buy different driving modes. And this is already happening today in a very smaller scale. You're driving.
I bought the acceleration boost for my Tesla Model 3. That is a $2,000 software feature that gave my Model 3 long range a basically faster acceleration. There you go. There's your example.
Exactly. And that is already happening today. If you look at this one, you are driving to work on comfort mode, right? You are driving public roads. You have big road excitations. You want to drive comfortable with ease, etc. And then you bring your car on a racetrack and you want to switch it to a completely different behavior. You want to have super agile steering input where very little steering wheel input give you very big response. You want to have super neutral driving behavior from a traction perspective. You possibly want to, let me say, push out your limits of your ESC intervention, those kind of things, to really get the maximum out of it. And then you go back and drive home, possibly in a fuel consumption mode or range mode, in this case, where you are driving to a highest efficiency, because you have already drained your battery to the absolute minimum on a racetrack, and you need to make sure that you get home at all. So this alone would be 3 different driving modes that are just being adjusted by software. The interesting piece is that the hardware needs to support, to let a car perform like a race car on a track. It needs to be built like a race car on a track. So,
and it's not just the electronics,
capabilities, right?
Yeah, it's the batteries and the motors. You need the current handling. You need the tabs on the batteries. Yes. And the inverters are doing a lot of heavy lifting, especially in terms of cooling requirements, correct?
Absolutely.
This is a big deal, right?
Cooling is actually the fundamental of efficiency and of the maximum output performance over time. So perfect cooling brings you maximum and long-term peak performance, and it brings you efficiency because you want to operate your motor always in the optimal. So whatever you do on the software is all about minimizing losses, right? And you cannot only minimize the losses on the driving experience if you're just taking away performance from the driver. Also happens a lot under the hood. How you control your power modules, right? How you manage your thermal aspects when you can do that. So
and that's the software
push
again.
down temperature when you can afford it, and then you allow big spikes when you need it. It's all logic, and it's all intelligence of the controls, right?
And that's basically software, ultimately, right?
It is.
So how much does, obviously, when you create a system, you're not just creating parts nowadays, you're creating systems for OEMs to use, right? So
Correct.
You're recommending a certain cooling system to go alongside, or do you also create the cooling system as part of that? Or is it just, because the vehicle already has a cooling system, you're going to need to integrate with it? Do you say, hey, these are the specs you need to hit? Or do you actually say, no, we have a separate cooling, we'll give it to you?
No, it's actually, sometimes if you're going for an oil cooling, it's separate, but it's being cooled by the vehicle level cooling system. So that for sure there's an interaction.
Because it's more efficient,
the total thermal management is done mainly by the OEM, because it's also the allocation of thermal capacity to the individual unit on the car, which is, by the way, software, right?
Yes, of course.
Everything is putting all my power to the front. Now I let the front cool down and bring the rear to place. Those kind of things are important. I'm going to warm up the battery to prepare for charging, and those kind of things is pure software. You need the actuator for the fluid distribution, and you can control your individual subsystems in the powertrain to the point you need it. But that's actually the point. And this is the big difference if you're saying, when we take the racetrack example again, right? We bring the car from on the racetrack, and your thermal management would operate fundamentally different than you would back on the street to go home.
Of course,
because you have different objectives. On the racetrack, you stretch it. On the way home, you want to operate it permanently in the optimum operating.
I remember when one of the first EVs that was competitive from the traditional car makers was released. I won't name names. That one of the companies that takes it apart, Monroe Associates, looked at it and said, wow, look at that, 4 different cooling systems or something like that, right? And of course, Tesla was already doing one cooling system with intelligent software allocation actuators. And, it's interesting because obviously this shift, from a vertically integrated software platform also means a shift from a vertically integrated hardware platform. Unified cooling, unified software and hardware, meaning less modules, less microcontrollers, more centralized compute, everything driven by the software from the manufacturer. How do you work in that world as a creator, supplier of parts? You basically have to collaborate with a company like Mercedes when they say, we want to own the software, right?
Sure. And we call it more kind of a feature allocation. So you have an experience that you as a consumer or the driver experience, and from there you break it down and allocate that to the different parts of the car. And this allocation and arbitration is 100% in the hand of the OEM. And that's also where this is being collected more and more into kind of central or domain level electronics, other than, let me say, putting features decentralized in 5 trillion different ECUs on the car.
Right.
However, where you control something like a steering system, a braking, a drive unit, even a window, you need to have local control to drive it, right?
Of course.
But the higher level functionality are going to be more and more centralized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for sure, in this case, the feature allocations are collaboratively developed between the OEM and us. The OEM already have very good requirements of how we would, let me say, operate in their environment. And we try to satisfy that or jointly resolve and develop issues if there are potential conflict, etc. That's very clear.
Well, listen, Dirk, we need to wrap up. So I want you to get your final thoughts. Where do you think, GKN fits in right now? What do you think people should take away in terms of their, consumer experience with drivetrains? Software matters. Is that basically it?
Yes, but the takeaway would, for me, software matters today already. In the future, software will matter even more. But also, without the fundamental good work on the mechanics, that this operates in a very good way, efficient, quiet, seamless, software is worth nothing. So we always need to consider at some point in time, software needs to get into the real world. And that usually happens then over motors, actuators, mechanical parts, etc.
Sensors. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So the intelligence is there, but without arms and legs, right? You are also, it's very difficult to express yourself. Even today in this podcast, right? Just to operate here our devices, it's helpful to have a few legs and arms and hands.
Fantastic.
So that is a takeaway. So software is the future, but good mechanics will still be a foundation. And that's also the philosophy for our company. We are going to be long-term an excellent mechanical company with brilliant software and controls capabilities.
You couldn't have summarized it better. I was just going to say, that's the thing about GKN. You are mechanical expert at heart, but you are adopting all this and making it all work. Thanks so much, Dirk, for this exciting, fun conversation. I could go on all day. Please come back sometime. And folks, we're going to continue with the rest of the show with the news and phones and everything else. And we're back with Alison Johnson of The Verge. Hi, Alison. Welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Good times. I really enjoyed chatting with you. We're both full of opinions. This should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
The OnePlus 12 is amongst us. Mine is still running a battery test right now because that was such a compressed review for me. I didn't get my review in it until late.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What about you?
I had it and it was one of those things where you're like, I have plenty of time before the embargo. And all of a sudden you're like, oh no.
Crap. Mm-hmm.
Actually not. There was, that was an illusion, but
I hate to say this for the audience because I want to do due diligence and spend at least 5 days to a week with a phone.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, don't tell anyone, but I only spent 3 days with that phone.
Yeah.
Well, it's not true because now I've used it 3 more days. So I actually have, but my review reflects a 3-day test period, which is not what I want.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We got to work with what we have.
I mean, I think you and I thankfully have played with enough phones and know OnePlus well enough and the context of this phone's launch well enough that 3 days was probably a good enough time. I mean, this phone is pretty damn great, so it wasn't really hard to write about, right?
Yeah, you sort of get that inkling after a few days. You're like, okay, the things I was concerned about are fine. And you're sort of just like confirming after that. But yeah, I mean, the thing that stood out to me on that phone is the battery life. And that's such a like not sexy, exciting thing in 2024, but it is so important. And it was just nice to see. I mean, they told us all that they worked with Qualcomm to get an extra 30 minutes out of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. And that's like, just bless them. I have no idea if they like, you cannot test that, but like, thank you for that 30 minutes. That's so thoughtful.
I mean, I was hoping to have the phone in my hand to show the viewers on Patreon right now, but it's still, I have to leave it alone because it's still running the battery test. And it's been going for, I think, like 15 hours or more now. Like it's still going. So I don't know. I expect this to be almost a 2-day phone for most people.
I think so. Yeah. And like my torture test is always if I'm traveling and I had a flight delay going out to San Jose. So that was just an extra 2 hours of like, I'm just going to be looking at things on my phone and calling my sister. And it made it to the end of the day, no problem. And I was kind of floored. I was like, wow. I was not even nervous for a second about having to find an outlet. So pretty good.
My headline was the return of the flagship killer. I know it's cliche, but when you look at this landscape out there, and I think before we look at the comparisons, I think we should talk about the fact that this phone does everything really well, I feel like. And the camera has always been kind of one of those things that with OnePlus, we were all kind of like, yeah, it's going to be okay, but not the greatest. And we learned with the Open that it can do a pretty damn good job. So this is pretty much the same camera system as the Open. And honestly, I'm very happy with it. And you're kind of a camera person, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think with kind of the last year of OnePlus phones, we started seeing, they made a lot about that Hasselblad integration when they kicked that off, was like a couple years ago. And And it was sort of like, okay, well, that's a lot of nice marketing stuff. But like, I think we really saw in the last year that kind of be like, oh, the color tuning is really nice. Like,
that's my favorite part.
Yeah, I'm getting photos out of this phone where I'm sort of like, well, I'm like at a children's museum with my kid and the lighting is super gross. I'm like, I'll just take a picture. Like, it's not going to look good. And that phone will come up with a photo. It's like, that looks good, good on you.
No, I was very impressed. I mean, I wouldn't say I was more impressed than the Open because they're very similar systems. The main sensor is slightly different because they don't have the stacked pixels there because they don't need the system to be as thin. It also means they have a slightly faster f-stop because I think they have more Z-depth room for the lenses, so it means that you get a little bit better low light performance from the lens, but the sensor does not pixel stack, so it doesn't have quite the same full well capacity. So probably a little worse on the sensitivity of the sensor, but I haven't really noticed a huge difference. I'm very impressed with the photos in low light that I've been taking. And since we're talking about, the current phones in North America here, like I felt that it was better in low light than the S24 Ultra.
I have not put them side to side the way that you have, but I think we're getting to a good place with the flagship phones like that. And I was really looking at the telephotos on all of them. It's just been interesting to see, like the OnePlus, correct me if I'm wrong, the OnePlus 11 had a 2x telephoto lens.
Yeah, something really silly that was useless with no OIS either.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
What?
I was like, this is not quite right. And
it was
bumping
more
that
portrait lens, right?
Yeah, which sort of felt like, couldn't you just do this with like sensor crop? And so I was really glad to see that go up to 3x, and that really made a difference, I think, in it feeling like a flagship phone.
Yeah, and I think the ultra wide being, a proper 48 megapixel, like you get better results than like with a Galaxy because they still have these 12 megapixel ultra wides, and you just get crisper, more detail. Like it might not be necessarily better in low light or anything. And they didn't skimp; they put autofocus on it, so you can do macro photography and stuff. Like I just feel like this is basically what I expect from a Pro or Ultra phone without the Pro or Ultra branding or cost. Yep. Because that's the thing. Like every time I was taking photos with these two phones side by side, the 24 Ultra and the 12, I was like, why would I pay $400 more for the Ultra when it's just an S Pen away? And I know some people are going to say, well, you have two telephotos, but I'm not sure. Like, the 3X one is still a 10 megapixel sensor. I'm sure they're using sensor fusion of some kind because like that seems like you wouldn't want to just use that 10 megapixel sensor as your main shot when you go from 3X to like 5X. I bet you they use some of the 5X for the center and possibly some of the other stuff from the main sensor since it's a 200 megapixel main sensor. Yeah, but I'm just puzzled. Like I get the 5X, the switch over, because I like the idea of a 5X that's a larger sensor, more than just a 10X, that big gap between 3X and 10X. Yeah. So they fixed that with the Ultra now. And you get better low light performance because you can pixel bin at 5X, right? But then that 3X seems almost redundant to me because you have a 200 megapixel sensor. You can pixel crop twice and be lossy, right? So you can go like down to 50 and then down to 12.
Right, a mere 12 megapixels.
So you do 4X at 12 megapixel.
Yeah.
Now, the pixels are 0.7 micron or something silly like that, but it's not going to be great in low light. But I don't know. It seems odd to me. And then, of course, the extra money. Like, where does that extra money go? I even look at the Pixel 8 Pro that's my daily, and I'm like, where did that extra money go? Like, when I look at what the OnePlus can do all around, not just the camera, I'm like, wow, they really nailed it. Like, this is exactly what we wanted from them, right? Like, value and no compromise. Not only did they give us wireless charging, they gave us 50-watt wireless charging. Like, wow. And I know I'm wearing a OnePlus shirt right now, so I know I'm a big fangirl. But look, I'm a fangirl because Oppo, BBK Group, OnePlus have been doing some really great stuff lately. And it was necessary. It was needed because, we only have iPhone and Samsung to play with here. And it's just boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when it's AI everything.
Oh, I know. And that was refreshing almost. And I think maybe just the timing of like we were all in San Jose getting the AI everything, I want to say brainwashing. That's not the right word. Like
Indoctrination.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was thinking. So we were hearing all of that. And then I go home to write the OnePlus 12 review. I was like, this is so nice. Like, it's just a phone. It's a phone-ass phone. It's not like...
That's the title of the podcast. It's a phone-ass phone.
I wanted to write that headline. I did not try to fight for that one. But yeah, and it's like it has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. If down the line Google starts selling Bard Plus Pro, whatever, as a subscription, and I'm sure it'll work on your OnePlus phone, but OnePlus is not trying to like have that out of the gate. Like we made our own AI this and AI that. It's like, we're going to do the phone stuff right. And then the AI like might come along.
Yeah. I love it. Exactly. When Nirav and I spoke about the S24 Ultra last week, we actually recorded at the Samsung event in the Samsung podcast studio, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. Very nice. Thank you, Samsung, again. But I felt like, when I interviewed the Samsung exec, Blake, he was like, oh, AI, this and that. And all I kept thinking was like, yeah, but half of it is in the cloud. So you're not even leveraging the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in any way. And you're bringing these features to Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 equipped S23 phones from last year. So I don't get it. Like,
yeah.
Like I'm not against the idea. Like there's some really cool features that they demoed, right? But then you find out, circle to search or whatever, that's a Google thing, and then you find out that, and I'm like, a bit too much AI, Samsung. Just calm down.
Calm
down.
I think we're a few years away from like AI will be really cool on our phones. And there's going to be things that we're like, this is great. I don't know how I lived without this, but I have not seen the killer use case yet or anything that makes me feel like, yes, this is worth $400 extra over a phone-ass phone. Like,
and I think that's, you're nailing something here that's really important, is that this is just software ultimately. And it could be sold as a subscription on any phone. So then you have no reason for your hardware to be that expensive. Just cover your costs with the hardware, make a profit. Yes, of course. But then maybe subscription-based the stuff, like Google does with Google One, right? Like I've been using all the features in Google Photos because I've got Google One and I pay for it.
Yeah.
Like I'm happy about that. But should my Pixel be more expensive because of it? No, it's already expensive enough now that I look at the OnePlus. Plus, OnePlus says you can send them a phone on fire and they'll give you $100,
Right. Yeah. Set it on fire. Send it on
that
over
was
to
such a Michael Fisher thing. Were you there for the Open launch when he said so at the briefing we had for the Open in September in New York, he's like, okay, let me get this right. I can light a phone on fire and ship it to you and you will give me $200 for my OnePlus Open. And Spencer was like, Yep.
That's the thing. I believe them.
Wow. And so, right now, I just want to point out for those of you who are kind of on the fence, you'll probably decide for yourself at the end of this podcast whether you want to buy this phone or not. There's a lot of good reasons. But one of the incentives that I thought was really exciting, other than the phone on fire for $100, is that you can get a memory upgrade for free right now. So essentially, you can get a 16 gig, 512 gig model for $699, which is like, holy crap balls, affordable. That's the price of the OnePlus 11 last year, which didn't come close to being this good.
Yeah. Even if they don't sell tons and tons and tons of phones, wonderful for them if they do. But it puts the pressure on the other manufacturers to be like, so why is this worth it? Why is this worth the extra $200 or $400 or whatever? Prove it to us. I hope they feel some of that pressure because the OnePlus 12 really is good.
Yeah. So other than that, I've got some things I'm not too happy about. I can't all be good. The mine is the green one, the emerald, whatever. Yeah, all their names. Those names are always crazy. But it looks like a kitchen counter to me. Like I just can't. I can't get over that. I wrote that in my review, and I mean, that's my personal opinion, but some people are going to dig it. Like this time, for the first time, I would have loved to grab the black one. And even better if the black one was vegan leather, like the OnePlus Open.
Man, that's what I want. Every phone in vegan leather at this point. Just all of them, please.
All of them, please. The grip is amazing, especially if, like you don't use a case.
I know.
So, yeah, it's a bit weird. Like it felt like I don't know if you've been to Taiwan, but there's Taiwan has a bunch of companies, obviously TSMC, there's MediaTek, there's, some big companies there. But one of them is called Evergreen. You've probably heard about them. They're a shipping company. They're the ones who got stuck in the Suez Canal a few years ago.
Okay.
Evergreen. So Evergreen owns a lot of stuff. They own hotels. They own Eva Air, the kind of most popular, transcontinental airline in Taiwan. So if you fly, from the US to, Taiwan, you have the choice of the US airlines, but you can also fly Eva Air. And they're big. It's funny. And every time I go to some sort of Eva Air, lounge, or if I go to an Evergreen hotel, because I've done a lot of business with companies in Taipei and I've gone to Computex many times, they have these marble finishes that are exactly like the back of the OnePlus.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, it's like a cultural thing. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that wasn't the best fit for this market, at least for me. But at the same time, I have to admit that, it's really well put together. It's, the metal frame, glass back, it feels great in hand. The camera quality is really cool. Like I have no major complaints. The other thing, and you'll probably agree with this one, is the IP65 versus IP68.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer. Yeah, it still feels like, I think as an anxious person, I want to know I have that ultimate, like, I drop it in a puddle, what have you. Like IP65 is good. It's definitely,
it's fine.
I feel fine walking around in the rain here in the Northwest and whatever. But yeah, I think just knowing that it's like a given at the price point that every other option is going to have IP68. Yeah, it still feels like, that would be nice. I would take that. Honestly, I would take that over fast wireless charging. Like, give me slow, boring, overnight.
15 watt is good enough.
Yeah. And like, I'm sure that's not how you make a phone. There's not like a switch that's like,
sliders.
Yeah. Turn down the wireless charging slider in the IP charger. But yeah, that's my kind of take on it. I don't love the flowy emerald either. It's something. It's just something too much.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to point out, which is really not a deal breaker, but if you compare to the competition, you have to be nitpicky, and it's our jobs, Allison, you or me. No millimeter wave, right?
Oh yeah, which is like you will get that at a Taylor Swift show, and
Exactly.
that we are seeing like those edge cases come through with millimeter wave, and yeah, that is a bummer. I also I do not enjoy the curved edge. I think I'm not. I don't know. I hear this is mixed. People have.
I can go either way, but overall, I find that now that I've used my Pixel 8 Pro for a while, and I'm like, yeah, maybe the flat screen's better. But I can live with it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like this is how much we have to think here of what is wrong with this phone.
Right.
Right. If I'm glowing a little bit, for those of you on Patreon watching me, it's because the sun decided to come out briefly.
Really? Are you up north? Or are you?
I'm in Vancouver, and I'm sitting right in front of my window overlooking the bay.
Gosh.
So I'm looking at the boats going in and out of the bay. It's great, but I can't do that on a sunny day. I have to close the curtains because otherwise it's just blinding me because I'm facing south. Yeah. And for a second there, I was glowing a bit. The sun just
send
popped
some
out.
down here. It's been gray.
Pushing it down to Seattle, pushing it.
Yeah.
If you don't know about this Patreon, I have a version of my podcast on Patreon, folks. If you want to see me and Allison speak and maybe potentially hold up some phones, I don't know if your OnePlus is within reach.
It is not.
If you can hold it up.
It's in the
closet.
Mine isn't.
It's in the closet. You've already put it away. You're like, I'm done. That's it.
It's going to be out again soon.
But yeah, check out patreon.com/tankgirl. That's patreon.com/GRL for the video version of the podcast. You get it in advance. So anyway, look, the other things I have to say, performance, pretty great. It does throttle a little bit and sustain performance, but it does it in a seesaw pattern, which I've never seen before, where it's like it's stable for, like, say you're doing 20 runs, right? Like typical, like, you know, I use the 3D Mark benchmark, which is like, I can't remember what it's called now, you know, I do the sustain one, and it's like 20 iterations of the same thing. So you can see typically the phone starts heating up and the drops performance. This thing stays about good for like 7 or 10 iterations, and then it drops, but it seesaws. It goes like down, 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 up to top again, down, 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 up to top again, down, down.
Yeah.
Never seen that. Usually it goes down and it stays down. So their cooling system is definitely doing something.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's quite there yet. So, I mean, this is extreme, right? If you're playing games, PUBG all afternoon or something, right?
Yeah.
So
I have definitely experienced the S24 Ultra in the Pixel 8 series getting hotter than the OnePlus.
yeah.
I made the mistake of, I had the Pixel 8 running a hotspot on it, and I had taken the passcode off of it because I needed to connect to my toddler's iPad really quick, or there was going to be consequences. I took it to a trade show or something, set it up. I was typing away. I picked the thing up. I was like, this is going to light on fire. And it's because 4 other people had jumped on my network. I was like, never again. I shut that down. But, you know, this is a little lesson in how hot phones can get.
It's interesting because I only switched over as my main phone to the 8 Pro, the Pixel 8 Pro, like around between Christmas and New Year's. I finally got a time to switch everything over. It's, you know, it's my personal phone. It's got like my banking apps, my Tesla app, all this stuff that I never put on a normal review phone.
Yeah.
And so it takes a little while to do a restore and get everything all set up again. And I took it to CES. I didn't really, it's interesting. I haven't had any issues. I was in Montana for the last 2 days for a car thing, and we get to drive cars in the snow. That was fun. And it was poor reception. It's the first time that I've had the same problem with the 8 Pro that with previous Pixels, like the 7 Pro and the 6 Pro, where it was overheating because of poor cell reception.
It's just trying to grab on.
And this is like where Tensor just fails, you know? Like, oh man, I just want a Snapdragon so bad on my Pixel.
I know. We're not getting it.
I know, Allison, we're not getting it. So, yeah, I mean, like looking at just a US-centric view here, what would you say, what would your advice be now that we know what, you know, we know what the OnePlus 12 is. We know what the S24 Ultra at least is. I haven't played with the other ones, but I can probably extrapolate. And then, of course, Pixel 8 Pro. And then, you know, do we want to include the iPhone in there? Probably not, because it's not an Android phone. But what would you recommend? What would you tell them to go after? Or would you even bother to pick anything from this year?
It's hard. And I, like you, I haven't fired up the regular S24s. I've been all S24 Ultra at this point. But something that I am thinking about is the Samsung and Google both promising 7 years of OS upgrades.
Oh, yeah.
Which is awesome. And I think I want to just wholeheartedly believe that. Samsung definitely has like a really good track record of coming through on those things. So that when you start to think of the calculation of like, are you a person who wants to hang on to their phone for a long time? You just want to get like the best ROI possible. That is, you know, a point in favor of the Pixel and the Galaxy. But yeah, I think there's like, at a point you have to go on vibes. Like Samsung software is occasionally great. It's occasionally like annoys the hell out of me. It'll send me a push notification to
I had to turn that off. It was an ad, like a Samsung ad.
Yep.
For those on Patreon, I'm holding out my S24 Ultra. Did you get the purple one too?
I did not get the purple one.
Oh, you got the gray one.
I got gray.
I like this one a lot. It's so hot. Look
That's
at it.
nice.
It's a good one. It's gold on the edges too. Look at that.
That is nice.
It's a very nice phone. Like, don't get me wrong. If you have the money and you're a Samsung person, you've used Samsungs, you want to continue using Samsungs, but it's $400 more than the OnePlus. And unless you need the S Pen, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And then Pixel is just great, but you get all those software features. That's what I live for, all the call screening and all that stuff. But then, Tensor, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. Yeah, it does its Tensor things. Yeah. I think it, I don't know how often people are going to a carrier store or like a Best Buy and like holding phones, but I think that is like
becoming a thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea if you're kind of trying to make a decision. And one thing like that is not all about AI and was kind of not a big part of the S24 Ultra pitch. The anti-glare in the
that is
screen,
amazing.
It's so good.
It's very good.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that's like, that really will make a difference in using your phone. You bring it outside and you're expecting to have to squint at it. And you're like, oh, I can see this just fine. That's, I think that's worth more money than some of the AI features at this point in time. I agree with
you. You actually make a very good point, because this is the thing, right? Like, everything about the OnePlus is great. Performance, battery life, camera, design, everything's solid. Display is really incredibly good too. I mean, it goes up to 4,500 nits, gets really bright in sunlight. But here's the thing, it's not linear, right? Like, doubling the nits doesn't double the perceived brightness to our eyes. And so the S24 Ultra goes up to 2,600, nits. But you put them side by side in the sun, and not only do they appear to be as bright, but that coating on the S24 Ultra, I would agree with you that alone is worth $100 out of the $400 right there.
Yeah. Yeah. They're underselling it.
But at the same time, now that it has a flat screen, the S24 Ultra, it really does feel like kind of like those Red Magic phones that also have a flat screen and are perfectly square all the way around. Like, it just feels like a weapon that you want to throw at your worst enemy when you're angry at them, and you will probably like embed it in their forehead or something. It's so sharp. It's so hard. It's so big.
Yeah, this thing right here.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'll have it in my hand, and you're just like on the couch, like looking at Instagram or whatever. I'm like, oh damn, I need to like move this thing.
It's a big phone, and even compared to the 15 Pro Max from Apple, it's just like, wow. So if you want something slightly more manageable, maybe that's the reason you go to OnePlus, and maybe that's where the $100 you just spent extra. The thing I said was worthy of the S24 Ultra being $100 more. The display becomes maybe kind of canceled out by that size. If you're into something like you like the smaller phones.
I do.
So I don't know. It's a tough call. Like, it's been rare that we've had a year where everything's good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so early in the year.
I know some people had already, I can't remember which pub wrote, this might be the best phone of 2024, I think, as a joke. But I'm like, OnePlus 12. And I'm like, really? Like, there's more. But if you think about it, like, we're not expecting any more regular phones other than the iPhone. Like, there's not going to be another S series Galaxy until next year. There's not going to be another OnePlus unless it's a folding phone. So what's coming next from the three big flagship players here in North America is folding devices. And of course, the new iPhone. And then, Moto might come out with an Edge. Like, the last year's Edge Plus was a really solid phone. It wasn't quite as good as the competition, but I thought it was a worthy effort.
Yeah.
But when I see what OnePlus is doing, I don't think Moto can match that.
Yeah. Moto has been taking some really small steps. I feel like OnePlus kind of, the chart over the past few years has been like, they went way too far in one direction and they came back and they're like correcting pretty quickly. And yeah, Motorola seems to be kind of stuck in like, okay, we're going to give you more of this. And we're like, no, we didn't like that. Like, we kind of get that again, and then they'll fix it in the next generation. That's my bird's eye view of the whole thing.
Yeah, when I reviewed the Edge Plus last year, I was like, yeah, okay, this is finally competitive, but it's still when I think about it now, like all of these phones we're talking about now, 6 months later, are completely obliterating this Edge Plus. Even if you were to take the
Yeah.
Edge Plus and put an 8 Gen 3 in there and maybe improve the cameras a bit, you
Right.
still would not be near the level of performance and quality, imaging wise at least, that you would be on an iPhone or Samsung or
Yeah.
OnePlus. And that's raising the bar. Like people I know say phones are boring, they all look the same, they all do the same thing. And because of that, right? Like what you said about the 7 years of update versus the 4 years of update. The reason I didn't even worry about writing about that, because I mean, I wrote about the fact that it's 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, 4 years of updates and 5 years of security updates, right? For the OnePlus, is that I don't even conceive that anyone in my audience would keep a phone for more than 4 years. 7
right.
years seems insane to me. Like I support it. I think this is good because some people can't afford it or don't care and they should be served for a long time. They take good care of their phones. Maybe their battery will last that long. Great. But 4 years seems plenty enough to me.
Yeah.
Like,
That's right. Yeah. It doesn't feel like a negative to the OnePlus. It feels like if you're my husband who's still rocking the iPhone XR, like,
oh boy.
yeah, someone who's going to have their phone for the most amount of time, then like that's a positive for the other ones. But yeah, I think what OnePlus is settled on. Oh my gosh. With
Never settle, Allison.
they never settle.
Never settle.
It feels right. It feels like you're getting your money's worth right there.
Yeah. No, I'm happy. I mean, you're right. You can ding it because it's worse than the competition, but doesn't seem to make much of sense to me to care at this. Like 4 years is like, I don't know. Like I finally experienced that, Allison. I traded in my iPhone 11 for an iPhone 15 Pro Max. And for the first time, I'm like, oh, so that's what it's like to be a consumer upgrading your phone. Holy crap, what a difference that made.
Yeah, I did the same with my iPhone 11, but I traded for the 13 mini because I'm a sicko.
No, the 13 mini, hang on to it. It's
I know.
one of the best.
Want to keep it in a drawer. I just take it out and like just pet it and put it back. Yeah.
That's fair. There are many phones that I've returned that I kind of wish I'd kept to just pet from time to time.
Yeah.
Like you were so good. You were so good.
Yeah, right.
Little phone. Oh man, memories. So many good phones over the years. Yeah. So many bad phones over the years.
Yeah. One of my favorite things in a group of people who write about mobile technology is to bring up Moto mods, and you just see everybody's like eyes light up. They're like, Moto mods, they were such a good idea at such the wrong time.
I know.
Like, oh, yeah.
I know. It's like, Nokia, like back in the day, they did all the things that became standard way before everyone else, and they never really marketed it right.
Yep.
It's so sad. It's like, oh, look, a front-facing camera on an iPhone. Yeah, I had that on my Nokia phone, like circa 1998.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts before we jump into kind of rapid fire through the news. Any thoughts on the S24 Ultra now that you've used it for more than a week?
Yeah, I really am at that point of, why is this proving itself to be worth that extra money? Because it is an extra $100 this year. It was already one of the pricier phones that you can buy.
Yeah.
And the S23 Ultra just felt to me like they took the formula of the kitchen sink phone and they like tweaked it just a little bit, and I was like, this is a great phone. Like
the S23 Ultra had me more excited last year than the S24 Ultra this year, and I don't know why. Like in every objective way, the S24 Ultra is a better phone.
Yeah, right. It is something.
Why that I can't let go of my S23 Ultra love?
I know. Yeah, it's weird. It's like this is still all the things I liked about the S23 Ultra are here. But something does feel different about it. And I'm still pondering it all. I'm still philosophically like sad about the 10 times lens, even though the 5X makes more sense. Like there's something stuck in my head where I'm like, oh, but that 10x optical zoom was so cool.
I know it was optical. They weren't cheating. Like
I
this
know.
in sensor pixel cropping BS.
Right.
Get off my lawn, you young kids.
It is definitely old man shaking fist at the sky. Part of me that is sad about the 10x ones, but no, it's a hell of a phone. I am still kind of weighing that, like, did they get it right this year? I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you're coming from an S20 Ultra or 21 Ultra, yeah, that's totally worth the upgrade. But honestly, even if you're coming from an S22 Ultra, I'm not sure it's worth it.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to recommend because, well, maybe the S22 Ultra, because that was 8 Gen 1 and that chip, oof.
Yeah. It was a toasty one.
Toastier than anything we have now, that's for sure. No, that's not true. There's Tensor.
It's true.
Toasty Tensor. That's what we should call it.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy. I'm so sorry, Google. I love you, but come on, do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're right, though. There's something about this phone. Maybe it's because we were so tired after CES and were like, screw you, Samsung, for throwing your unpacked event in our faces. But we're all kind of like, oh, S24 is meh. But like at the same time, there's some genuinely good things in there. Like I think the S24 Plus is the unsung hero of the three because it's so much better and it's the same price. Like they've improved the display. I think you're getting a better upgrade than the S24 Ultra or the S24.
Yeah.
And you're not paying more. So
yeah. And part of my frustration is that they present it as very much like AI has arrived. This is it. Galaxy AI is here. It's like, this is a very small start. Like some of these things are good. Some of them are really not good or useful yet. But like, don't try and tell me that like AI has arrived. I don't think we're there.
Do you remember back in the Galaxy S3, S4 timeframe when they were globbing on all these features onto their phones? Like it was all about the features and it wasn't even about the hardware. They were just talking about the features. That's what this event felt like to me. It's like, but with AI, right? It's like, and you've done this before, Samsung, and you've fallen flat on your face. Did you not learn a lesson? Like, because ultimately, these features, most of the good features, some of them were really good, ended up in mainline Android and ended up on all the phones. And some of them were just so gimmicky. Like, to be honest, I still think that hovering over something with the S Pen is like, who's going to do that?
It's so
I drink too much caffeine to keep it steady over. Like
I know. I can't do it. I have to try. I'm going to try and do this air thing.
Gestures.
Air gestures. Yeah. I'm like, oh no, I don't want it.
Yeah, it's like anything remember like the LG with the gesture thing, like,
oh gosh, I don't. I was in
LG
Cameraland.
G7, I want to say G7, G8.
Yeah.
Like it had this gesture. Oh man, it was so bad. I felt so sad for LG. I love them dearly, but that one, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they launched the Wing before they decide to call it quits. And that is another phone that I like to pull out and pet from time to time.
Yeah.
And go, you were so good. So good little phone.
Yeah. You were just at the wrong place at the wrong time.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we got for news here. So, it's interesting because there's a lot of little things I missed during CES. First, we have a Pixel 8 series now, minty fresh is what I wrote in our topics.
Nice. Yeah.
I still haven't received a single word from Google about this.
Oh, no.
I mean, you probably did, but, typical.
I took a look at it and I was like, I mean, a photo. I don't have the phone. And I was like, this isn't right. The saturation isn't right on this photo. No, that's what it looks like. Like it's so light.
I know.
It almost looks white. Like,
yeah, who did the unboxing recently? One of the big YouTube creators. And I was like, is their saturation set properly?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the photos, the press photos, make it look minty. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, so it's minty. And then I see it and I was like, no, that's white. No, that's minty. No, that's white. Yeah. Anyway. But okay, they exist. They cost the same. If you want mint, go get yourself a Pixel 8 or 8 Pro. They're good phones. Yeah. Basically, right?
Right. Yeah, now you have a slightly minty option.
Yeah, slightly minty. I like that. But you can also wait for the Pixel 9 series because now we know what it looks like. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell, Google?
My Galaxy Brain take this year is that phones are just gonna converge on
To the iPhone.
the iPhone design. Yeah, it's like this. That's fine. I think I personally like
It's a good
flat
design.
edges, the flat screen. It's like you just see year after year, like Pixel's kind of getting closer to that. The S24 Ultra with the like flat display, and they're kind of flattening out the edges. I don't know. It's a
You're
real
right. You're right. 100%.
tinfoil hat thing to be like,
Nope.
3 years from now, every phone's going to look like that.
I mean, the S24 is flat edges for the first time. When I talked about on the podcast last week, I said the S24 and S24 Plus are a dynamic island and camera pod away from being iPhones.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right? That's the only,
They look like iPhones.
You can't tell them apart other than that. And so Pixel 9, just so in case you haven't gotten that from all our discussion, it looks like it has flat side edges. And, the camera pod is more like on the Pixel Fold, where it's like kind of like not a bar that goes from edge to edge, but like kind of a very long oval that's kind of like protruding from that. I honestly totally dig this industrial design in these photos. Better than the 8 Pro that I have today, to be honest with you. Because as soon as they rounded the edges, I was angry.
Yeah.
Like I wanted a weapon in my hand like the Galaxy S24 Ultra.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you're going to round everything, that at least put the flat side so that it's not fully rounded everywhere.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, check out, I'll put links to The Verge on these two, the mintiness and the 9ness of the Pixel. Asus launched some phones. Of course they did, with the ROG Phone 8 series as an 8 Pro and an 8 Ultimate, I believe. And if you want to read a review, Hot Hardware reviewed the Pro, but I want to link to The Verge because they covered all of them. So you can see all the differences. Have you played with these? Do you have an opinion? What's your take? ROG?
No, they're fascinating to me. I think the consensus on the ROG, as much as there's a consensus on a phone that's not released, is that it looks a little less gamery. It looks almost like, which makes sense to me. Like it still it can like light up on the back, right?
Mm-hmm. This one actually seems like it has a dot matrix that you can program to display different things. Because they did that with their ROG laptops, and the lid on the laptop had like a dot matrix LED array that you could program to have like a ticker tape going by, I pwned you, sucker, or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what should probably go on there.
I mean, no, look, I just want to mention it. I know some of you are really into gaming phones, and I respect that. I've also the Red Magic 9 Pro is coming to the US, but that was last year. I'm trying to get a review in it because every year they send me their phones. So I'll let you know what I think when I get my hands on it. But now you have some Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 gaming phone options. Okay, let's talk about something that could go sideways very easily because we could both be very jaded. Is the the Moto G Play 2024 came out while we were at CES.
Yeah.
The sigh says it all.
Sigh. Yeah. I have like skin in this game because I told my mother for years, she was a Moto fan for years, Moto mod early adopter, bless her. And I had her buy one of their budget phones, maybe like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it did not go the distance for her. And she's on a Pixel 7a now. And I'm like, oh, it was
at least she got saved.
Yeah. She's doing okay now. But they've kind of disappointed me, I have to say.
I have to say, there was a time when the Moto G series was a phone I looked forward to because I knew it was going to kick ass in the mid range. I knew that the software is going to be solid and well done. Like it would be optimized. It would run well on this slower hardware. And, even for a time, they made a Moto G out of metal and glass, like metal frame and everything, like with antenna bands. Like it looked premium, and it still was super cheap, like $280, I think it was like the 4th gen or something. And then it's just a sea of cheap plastic with you're lucky you get a 720p display that's 90 hertz. Ooh.
I know.
And like bezel galore, like enough bezel that you could like probably store a banana in there. And then, you look at the chipsets and you just roll your eyes, and the camera is 50 megapixel of potato. You might as well have a 12 megapixel shooter in there. Look, I hate to say that because I love Moto. I really love what they do.
Yeah.
I think they can apply themselves and do some cool stuff. Like, where is the excitement and the love in the G series?
I know. And they don't get the software updates. It just feels impossible to recommend a phone that's going to get like 1 or 2 OS upgrades at the best. Like,
yeah. And then you have the problem of the software actually isn't very optimized on these cheaper phones. And it's just, you end up with like, the Moto experience, but completely destroyed by the fact that everything's laggy.
Yeah. Yeah. They wouldn't keep up after that anyway. But yeah, they always, like, I love the peak notifications that Moto does, is like on the lock screen. Like, I want this on every phone. You long press it, you get the information. You swipe it, it's gone out of your face. Like, I think that is the ideal system. But yeah, there's things that to like about it, and then it kind of lets you down.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it is honestly, it's the Play. So it's the most, it's basically the Moto E equivalent, because Moto E is gone. This is, so, okay, I'm willing to cut some slack, but right now I'm still a little butthurt by this small downgrading of the G lineup. And I wish that, in the same way Moto's listened to us and made the Edge Plus actually a pretty decent flagship last year. And in the same way as we kind of all have a soft spot for the Razors in some way or another, like, I wish that we could go back to that on the G series, and the G series one just like a laughing stock, which is basically what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad.
So too bad. Okay, let's see what else we got. No crying for the Moto G. Oh, Redmi Note 13 is now global. So it's actually the 13 series. So there's a whole bunch. But I just want to point that out because they came out in September in China. So it's a while ago. The Redmi Note is a very special beast because the way I described it a few years ago when I reviewed it for Geekspin was, obviously it's not available in North America, but it's available in the West and like Europe and stuff. It's like you compare it to a Xiaomi flagship, and it's 90% of that Xiaomi flagship experience for like 50% of the price.
Wow.
They're that good. Like, they always have great cameras, great displays, great battery life, great specs for the money, and they deliver an experience that matches.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I've never used one. I haven't got my hands on one because I focus on the North American launches, but
of course,
it's a slick looking phone.
I briefly played with the 12 Pro Plus last year, which was the top of the range of that Note series, which is now being replaced by the 13 Pro Plus, and I couldn't fault it. It's a solid phone. It had a great camera with OIS. It had, pretty much everything you'd expect on a phone for like $300. Basically, it's what the Moto G should be.
Yeah, exactly.
The higher end Moto Gs.
Yeah. If there was a little like more love sprinkled on it.
Just a little more love.
Yeah.
Could have a song. Honor Magic V2 is finally coming to Europe. Also very strange. That came out in August in China.
Oh, okay.
How has it taken this long to come out to the West?
It's weird.
It's the thinnest folding phone in the world.
That, I saw a picture of it, I think you linked to, maybe it was GSM Arena, but I was like, that's not a folding phone. Like, it's just, when you see it head on, you're like, that doesn't look like a folding phone. And it's just that thin and like, it looks like a normal phone.
Look, the bottom line about the V2, Magic V2, is like, I had one in my hand, like a few of the media got the Chinese version. Mm-hmm. It's as thick as the Ultra.
Oh my gosh. That is wild.
It's uncanny. Like, you touch it and you're like, how does this work? Yeah. And here's the kicker. It has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery.
Yeah, that's wild too. So it has two?
Two. But my point is, the batteries themselves are super thin. Yeah. And then think about it. There's an entire camera stack in there, triple camera. There's an entire display that is in there, an OLED, right? And then there's another display on top in the front that's really high quality, LTPO, the whole shebang.
Oh my gosh.
And then you got, a Snapdragon, I think, a 8 Plus Gen 1 or 8 Gen 2 or something. You got like all the RAM and the storage and the port. Like, basically, when the thickness of the phone when it's unfolded is the thickness of the USB-C port.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
It's so cool.
it's super cool. I gotta give Honor the major props. Of course, the camera isn't as good as like a OnePlus Open or even a Galaxy Z Fold, but at that point, I don't care. It's like, you did it. You made a phone that just blows my mind.
It's awesome. Yeah.
So this is what I'm looking forward to be getting my hands on. I've requested a review unit now that it's a, I think the smaller pubs, they don't have enough to send of the Chinese model. So usually they have more of their Western models to send. So hopefully I'll get one to brag about for a while. So it's such a, like, I love Honor. They do some cool stuff, but this is over the top. This is just so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically it for the phone news. So some of these I know happened during CS or during the whole unpack, because we were completely monopolized by Samsung and OnePlus there for a few days. And on top of that, I went to 2 car events, one in Napa and one in Big Sky, Montana. Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
So that was fun, but I tell you, it's hard to write a review when you're on an airplane.
Oh no. Yeah.
Anyway, I did it though.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah. The last thing I think is really exciting, because you're a Mac user, I'm a Mac user. The Mac turns 40. And I linked to The Verge here because Jason Snell, this guy has been writing about the Mac for eons. He's one of the, authorities on Mac stuff. So the fact that you managed to get Jason to write for The Verge was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a little kind of recap of where the Mac has been, where it's coming, where it's going from, and where does your Mac story begin, Allison?
Gosh, I'm kind of like I'm like a very casual Mac person. But I like, this is a Vox Media Mac.
Right.
And it's I'm a very like, whatever computer. I'm extremely picky about a phone. Computers, I'm just sort of like, I'll use whatever. But this is the M1 Air, and it's the first laptop that I've ever been like, I love this thing. Like, yeah, I unplug it, I walk around my house for 8 hours. I'm like a cat. Like, I have to follow the sun wherever it is in my house, and that's where I'm gonna sit. Because
you're in Seattle, like me in Vancouver, yeah.
Right? Yeah, you have to. I don't have to worry about plugging it in. I fly across the country. It's fine. I'll hear the fan on my husband's, actual desktop computer. I'm like, what is that noise? Is that rain? Oh, it's a fan. Like, it's computers have fans. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So I guess my relationship with a Mac is very casual until the M1 MacBook Air showed up, and I'm like, yeah, this is really nice.
Yeah. For me, it started technically in college a long time ago, back when the Macs were kind of like expensive and confusing because there's so many different choices and not very popular, and Windows was becoming a thing. So we're talking the 90s sometime. And I had access to the Mac and I enjoyed using it, but I was like, I don't understand who can afford these things and why they would spend that kind of money. And then, when OS 10 came out, which is now Mac OS, the new operating system that really, was Linux-based, or rather Unix-based. And that was really, the foundation of everything from the Apple Watch to the iPhone to the iPad to Vision Pro to the Mac OS today. When that came out, I was like, I'm a Unix user or Linux user. I miss the ability to have all these commands at the command line because I was a developer in video games. I was working on Windows a lot. And I was like, I need to get one, and their laptops are so sexy. So I splurged in 2004 and bought a 12-inch PowerBook G4, the Pro aluminum thing, but the small display.
Yeah.
Super thin and everything and cool with a optical drive still in there. Crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And I love that thing. And so then I upgraded that to the first MacBook that had the Intel chip when they went to Intel. And that was a white one, like a plastic white one, 13-inch.
Yeah. Okay, I remember those.
Also with an optical drive. And from there, I bought the first MacBook Air, the one that came out of the manila envelope. As a tech geek, I was like, I cannot not buy this thing.
It was a big moment.
OMG, right?
Yeah.
And it was underpowered, but this is actually the good thing, is because I seem to always pick the most portable Macs. I always pick the most underpowered Macs, and I learned to work with the lesser RAM and the lesser speed storage. And so my Mac experience has always been very good because I've managed to scale my work flow to work within the specs of what I had. And so I had that original Air for a couple of years, and I went to the 11-inch Air when it came out because I wanted the portability, and upgraded that 2 or 3 times. And then I got to what's the last thing I had? I bought the MacBook, the 12-inch with the Retina display, the one with one port. Because again, I'm a masochist. And no, it was amazing. I love that thing. I want them to make that with an M3 chip, like so bad. It's so thin. Like, just give me an extra port though. One on each side, that's all I need. One on each side. And MagSafe and a headphone jack. And then the same chassis, super thin, 12-inch Retina. I'm in 100% with an M1 or M2, M3, whatever. I'm in. But then I traded that in for my M1 MacBook Air, which now Theo uses. And then now I have an M2 MacBook Air. And I have to say the M chips solved the problem I was having. I still have the portability that I want, but now my battery life and my performance are off the charts, it feel like, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I always look at the MacBook Pros and I'm like, that's overkill. I don't need that. Like, I can understand for some people it's necessary. Like, if you're editing 8K video or whatever, I get it. You know, bless you. I believe you. It's all good. But for me, it's like, I don't think I would ever, even my M2 here, I don't think I ever crank it to the max.
Right.
Because I still have those old habits of like, oh my God, 10 tabs. I can't go more than 10 tabs, you know, when I can.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't, because I'm kind of anal retentive about managing my RAM and stuff now.
Yeah.
So my Mac story was, it's been a while, and I really enjoyed it along the way. So
yeah, here we are.
And yet I'm an Android user.
Right.
Yet I don't use any of Apple's services, barely at all. It's all third-party apps that I'm running on my Mac, basically.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Any iPhone I get my hands on, like Chrome is the first thing I install, and like they can coexist.
100%.
It's not too painful.
Not too painful. Well, listen, Allison, we should wrap up. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, your various social media handles, and also, you know, tell them about your work at The Verge?
Yeah, I make it very simple. I'm at AllisonJoe1 on Threads and Instagram. That's where I'm at lately.
Yay!
Yeah. Left the other place.
Good for
the
you.
Bad place.
The bad place in the woods. Yeah. What about you're writing at The Verge? You do all their phone reviews pretty much, right? Yep,
that's me. I'm the phone lady. I'll have some S24 reviews coming your way soon. And I'm going to Mobile World Congress for the first time.
Oh my God. Well, I'll see you there.
Yes.
That's exciting. A lot of people are going for the first time this year. I'm really surprised. It's going to be fun. So
it is. Oh my gosh. I've heard nothing but great things. Everybody just glows about it.
It's Barcelona. How can you go wrong?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
And it's more chill than CS. So, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you there. And folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL, like the comic book character. Just drop all the vowels. You get my handle. I'm still on X. I don't call it that, though. Twitter. I'm mostly on Threads, though. If you really want to interact with me and Allison, you should do it on Threads. Instagram, on Blue Sky, for better or for worse. And also YouTube. So youtube.com/Mobile Tech Podcast is where the podcast lives. If you want to download some additional content like unboxing videos, hands-ons, that kind of stuff, go to the YouTube channel. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. And the podcast itself is at mobiletechpodcast.com. And of course, on all the platforms, Google, Apple, you know, Spotify, Pocket Casts, every place good podcasts can be found. If your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. It helps. And then finally, if you want to help me out, there is an awesome way to do that with Patreon, patreon.com/Tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. You get a video version of the podcast in advance, a couple of days ahead, if you want to subscribe to that. And then, you know, there's other perks there you can check out. So if you want to help me out, that's one way to do it. Another is to go to the show notes where you'll see all of the links for the stuff we talked about today, including Allison's review of the OnePlus 12. And if you click there, there's a link that'll take you to a PayPal button that you can make a donation. You buy me a coffee or something. That'll really help as well. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, GKN. GKN Automotive is a world-leading global automotive technology company at the forefront of innovation. Its origins date back to 1759, and for the last 70 years, it has been putting key technologies into series production. It is the trusted partner for most of the world's automotive companies, specializing in developing, building, and supplying market-leading drive systems and advanced e-powertrain technologies. And then I want to thank you, Allison, for being my guest this week. Thanks so much for coming on the show again.
Thank you for having me. It was delightful.
Well, absolutely. We'll have you on at some point again in the future. And folks, stay tuned. We'll have another show next week. So until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.